is the Two Marketeers podcast, where hosts and marketing experts Patrick and Lindsay Waugh seek to uncover what makes brands so powerful in how they impact modern society and culture.
Two Marketeers. They've got a podcast. The Two Marketeers podcast.
Good morning, Sean Patrick.
Good morning, Lindsay Waugh. Good morning, Marketeers.
Yes, good morning, Marketeers. How are you today?
I'm good.
Good.
We were just talking about how some people call it the February blues, and I decided to turn the February blues into the February blurs.
Same.
Yeah, it's whipping by. I don't know what's different this year, but I'm just head down, and it's okay. It's yucky outside. I don't have to go and climb a mountain. I have to shovel like I did this morning, but it's all a blur. Let's go Feb.
You actually had to go outside yesterday because you brought me tortilla.
Was it good?
Ooh, baby.
Yeah?
Oh my gosh.
You're not being nice?
I'm never nice.
I was going to say that. I actually got to meet our number one, well, I've met her, but I got to see the Two Marketeers' number one fan.
My mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were very happy to see you. They're like, what a lovely fellow.
A lovely fellow.
Let's not oversell him. Okay.
Lovely fellow, Lindsay? Really? Like that's over the top?
It was over the top for me. So let's not spend any more time talking about it.
Okay. That's not.
Well, as we Marketeers, as we were getting into thinking about what to talk about with this episode, I basically personally did a complete 180 where
I think we both did.
Yeah, we both did. But I was just like, enough is enough. A few episodes ago, we posted an episode about DEI and we were getting super heavy into a lot of the topics. And then there's the headlines and all the things. And I'm like, we need to get back into like brands who are doing positive stuff and like talk about what they're doing from a CSR perspective and all of this stuff. And then I was like, I just can't.
I'm done. I think we had to remember who we are as a brand, and we are not that.
Yeah.
We are not news.
We're not news. And sometimes we get into very deep topics. And I think this was a moment for us to say, let's bring a little bit of levity to the conversation.
Do it.
We don't want to talk about doom and gloom. We don't want to talk about headlines. And I was like, I just kind of, for a minute, I just want to put my head in the sand and I don't want to think about it. And then what pops into my inbox is an article from VML that is called Reality Shift. And it talks about how Gen Z embraces different realities for hope and optimism in a chaotic world. So this article dives into Gen Z and this idea of like reimagining reality. And they get into what they call delusional reality, or like delusional thinking, and how Gen Z has this tendency or appetite to kind of adopt this delusional mindset to cope with all of the things that are going on in the world. So
bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts. And as this article kind of goes deeper and deeper, what they really end up talking about in the end is this like unwavering optimism and like hope for the future. So as I'm reading this, I was like, this is what I'm doing. I too, as the oldest possible millennial, I too am interested in adopting a delusional mindset and kind of changing the way that I think about things to focus more on hope and optimism versus getting sucked in to all of the things that are going on in the world that are making me feel very kind of like chaotic and out of control. So
I'm actually excited because I have firsthand experience as a parent to 3 Gen Z. Remind me who VML is.
VML is a global agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good for context. So I'm guessing this is like data based, like this is, the result of science.
Maybe.
Okay.
I think it's kind of like an opinion piece based on like the mindset of Gen Z and bringing in some of the like coping strategies that they're using to combat this chaotic world, and talking about how like brands can lean into supporting this generation during this time.
Okay.
So the first thing is there's this really cool TED talk out there that I think people should go and listen to. It's by Danny Reyes, a researcher in Manila. And she, in this TED talk, talks about how Gen Z's Delulu culture is impacting their reality. And essentially, what this TED talk speaks about is they call delusional thinking like Delulu for Gen Z. And they say Delulu is the Salulu, which I am reciting in my mind. Like when things feel out of control, when the world is kind of imploding, exploding, all of the ploding possible. Delulu is the Salulu, as in like delusional thinking or this
It's so good.
hyper optimism is the solution. So, like taking your own personal mindset and kind of shifting it versus relying on all of these like external forces to determine how you feel. So again, they kind of say that signifying that this like literal delusion or delusional thinking is a coping strategy. And Gen Z has kind of like come to age in these really challenging times. And social media has been something that's inspired them to try and achieve this life, this like big life that they think that they can see online. And then they're just struggling to make it happen.
This delusion you're talking about.
Yeah, this delusion.
Right.
So they say people just want a better life for themselves. They want a good life. They want to be able to travel. They want all of the things. And instead of like focusing on what they can't have, this like delusional thinking is kind of the mindset that will enable them to get there and to live some form of happiness and optimism in this chaotic world. So this really resonated with me, although I'm not a Gen Z, in that sometimes when we get into some of these deep topics, we do have to at some point kind of stand back, take a little bit of a delusional moment in a positive way. It's not associated in a negative way, and say like, hey, how can I think about this differently? How can I like have some sort of positive escape? How can I kind of change how I'm thinking to be able to have a happy life? So I thought it was super interesting, not only because you have Gen Z children, so I'm very interested to hear and for you to kind of challenge this topic based on what you know, but also like in my work a lot lately, I've been speaking a lot about this idea of like escapism and brands and how brands can kind of support people as they're looking for these moments of delusion or optimism or escape or joy. So that's something that's definitely like top of mind for me personally, but also like in my work. So I'm going to pause and say over to you as the dad of 3 Gen Z and someone who's kind of living it. Like, what are you thinking about this topic?
Well, my first question is this person Danny Reyes, are they a Gen Z?
Yes.
Okay. I definitely lean into that, or what I would say what's different between my kids who are between the ages of 19 and 26. It kind of clicked something in me that kind of drives me crazy as, the annoying parent, which I know I am.
Yeah.
The judgment of that would explain when my kids say they're broke, but they still go to really expensive concerts or go for these, plunge, hot, cold plunge experiences, that it's like one thing they're good at is managing their feelings better than we are. I feel like that word delusion has a lot of weight, and I feel like it's a heavy one. I like it when it's called Delulu, right? And when you say things like the way you brought it to me, it's like an escape. And, it's why video games, and what do they call that, where you're the player?
First person?
Yeah, it's something like first person or something like that. It's it's not only an escape, but it's an escape that you can still connect. Usually we think of escape of getting away from everyone, but where that's really changed is they escape to these places where they are social, right? So you see all of these interactions that they make, but I feel like what caused it was this sort of societal shift where at a time where I would compare in my life where I was the most social, like late high school and university and college and that sort of thing, are things they have been robbed of.
Right.
They had to cope. They, we're all a product of our environment and our time, of our experience. So first off, I do think Delulu is the Salulu. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Where it's provocative is when you truly look historically at what delusion means.
Yeah. So two things quick. The first thing is that they're very sure to state in what they're talking about this Delulu is Salulu is that it's not the traditional definition of being delusional. Because normally,
You're not crazy.
yeah, crazy. Yeah. Normally, which also, so delusional and crazy are both like very triggering canceled words that we don't use normally. But Gen Z is almost owning and redefining delusion as a sense of hopeful optimism. So they feel comfortable in this Delulu is the Salulu because they're redefining what delusional means.
I feel like it's almost like what psychedelic was in the 60s, right? It was
Gotcha.
drug induced. It was drug induced, but it was a state where you had to question the reality you were in because the reality you find yourself in is too much to cope with.
That's right.
And that's healthy.
It is. And like, honestly, so this morning I went down a shifting reality rabbit hole on TikTok. So this idea of shifting realities and into like a more hopeful, optimistic reality and Delulu is the Salulu and all of this is like, there's so much content on there of people like actively trying to shift their reality to a place where they've realized all of the things that they want to have. It's almost like manifesting on steroids, to be honest, which they also talk about in this article, this like hyper manifestation or this idea of manifesting to like help people get into a reality where they feel hopeful. So I would encourage people to check this stuff out online. It's really, really interesting. But I think the second thing is what you were connecting in the beginning. So connection and escape. This is something I've been talking about with people for probably the last like year in the upfront of presentations and talking about trends and human behavior and all of that. And like you said, it used to be escape to disconnect. And now like escapism and connection are so closely tied in that the next generation is escaping to connect in a way that makes them feel optimistic and hopeful, not escaping to run away.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to a very human, it's what makes us human, the need to connect. So it's that sort of like full circle where in a world where connecting was virtually impossible, there's a pun in there somewhere. It was dangerous. It was forbidden. Like they were forced into this bad place that they had to apply the behaviors they knew and had to adapt to reconnecting in a different way than we've known. Physical, in person, like what I would call conversation. So I just feel like they've learned to cope with that, where these alternate realities remove all these things we're restricted from talking about our opinion on.
Right. Yeah.
For the sake of connecting.
I haven't gotten that memo about the things you're not supposed to talk about. I'm literally like, can we talk about this?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
good.
yeah.
I mean, I've said it before. It's because I had to learn that there were things I said that my children didn't accept.
Right.
Listen, shit has changed, and I can choose to disregard it and try and look at it through my lens, or I can choose to learn something by having the empathy to look at it through their lens. Right? Which I guess is what makes us strategists.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. So like, I think the takeaway like from this conversation, which could then be an entire episode, is like, what is the role of brands and like brand building in businesses and companies when you're thinking about Gen Z and this mindset and this almost like pride around Delulu as the Salulu versus being like, don't be delusional. It's like, no, go and find your healthy optimism so that you can feel like you can survive and thrive in a world that you don't have a lot of control over. So I feel like it's like two lenses. The first thing is some brand marketers who might be listening to this are like, Gen Z's not our target, so I don't necessarily need to know. But they sure as heck are probably your employee base. I'm sure you have a lot of people who work for you or work around you or work, in and amongst the projects that you work on, where I think understanding this mindset and this like human behavior and this desire to escape and connect and shift reality is something that we need to kind of understand, and that we can foster experiences around knowing what people are going through.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is for brands and brand marketers and agencies who do have Gen Z as their target. I think it's such a cool space right now to be able to create campaigns and work and like all of the things around your brand that can help people find joy and this healthy dose of optimism, even when we feel like sometimes we have little to be optimistic about. But it's like, how can you lean into that, knowing that this is what the Gen Z target is doing? This is the mindset that they're in. So like, how can we be there to support them during that? And how can we play into it to be a spark of joy in people's lives?
Wow. Yeah. I think my stance as a parent is really where, when you talk about the opportunity, is this is the opportunity where the older generation has an opportunity to learn from the younger generation. And that hasn't happened in history, unless I'm mistaken. And that's the position I take, is to say, we did a shitty job at making the world a better place. Gen X, I think millennials did a good job too. They're the ones who have to fix it. And I'm like, Delulu, if Delulu is the Salulu and they're the ones who are going to Delu it, celebrate it. And for brands, it's not about them being your target. They are defining how it's going to change everything for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, I'm so tired of the topic of like, kids these days. And I'm like, you know what? Sure, they drive me crazy. That's their job. It's my job to be annoyed by them. But I will embrace that. I honestly believe they're much better people than I am. They have learned to cope with shit in much healthier ways. And the people who think that their behaviors are delusional are the people who are afraid to be delusional. Yeah. In the sense that Lindsay said.
I just think, thank goodness this is what they're doing, because I am on this bandwagon. Like, Delulu is a Delulu. I'm here for it. We are doing this. And so let's figure out how we can create some really like cool and interesting stuff around it. Like I said, whether it's internally at companies or externally in marketing and in strategy, it's just like a cool time if this is how we're going to be able to collectively cope. So let's go for it.
Do it. I love it. You made it real easy to come up with the title of this, so thank you for that. Delulu is the Salulu. I'm making the t-shirts in my head. Thank you, Lindsay. That was awesome.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks for the break. See you soon. Bye, Marketeers.
Bye, Marketeers.
Thanks for listening to the Two Marketeers podcast. New episodes launch every 2 weeks.
Find the Two Marketeers podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you like to listen. And be sure to rate and subscribe.
Listen on our website, thetwomarketeers.ca, or you can ask Alexa to play the Two Marketeers podcast.
Want to keep in touch? Follow the Two Marketeers on LinkedIn or at Two Marketeers on TikTok. We've always got something to share.
This podcast is over.